The 50 United States of America span over 3.79 million square miles of land. How did a country that started as 13 small colonies on the Atlantic coast become the empire that reaches the Pacific, just 70 years after those colonies gained independence from the British Empire? Some Americans would be able to tell you that President Thomas Jefferson's Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the early U.S., but few know that President James K. Polk pushed American borders to their continental resting place, adding 13 states. How did Polk acquire so much land? Much like President John F. Kennedy's New Frontier, Polk had a plan for the nation. Manifest Destiny. The philosophical justification that America was meant to expand to the shores of the Pacific. Unfortunately, his realization of this God-given quest has been lost to the ages, and Polk's greatness has been overlooked. Straightforward and effective, Polk remains one of the most underappreciated and forgotten presidents of the United States. Upon entering office, Polk was guided by his belief in a mandate to achieve his four goals: to establish an independent treasury system, to lower the tariff, to acquire California, and to settle the Oregon border dispute. Of these four goals, his expansionism was his most notable.
The Republic of Texas has made known her desire to come into the Union. Our title to the country of the Oregon is clear and unquestionable. The jurisdiction of our laws and the benefits of our republican institutions should be extended over them in the distant regions where they have selected for their homes.
Polk realized his goals when he finally accomplished America's stretch from sea to shining sea. From the annexation of Texas to the acquisition of Oregon and Californian territory, Polk acquired more land than any person in United States history. After learning of his attainment of more than 1/3 of continental America, we decided to discuss this defining accomplishment with the public.
Polk. No, he was probably one of those middle presidents that nobody really remembers, right?
Polk was like one of the I don't even remember what he did.
Yeah, that's how that one goes.
To our great sadness and surprise, very few people had heard of Polk's accomplishments, or even the man himself, despite his acquisition of 1/3 of the United States. So how much land did Polk actually acquire?
Through treaties, Polk acquired 260,000 square miles of Texas territory, and just about 300,000 square miles of Oregon territory.
In total, Polk secured 1 million square miles of U.S. territory. Why is this so important in Polk's presidency? This land later made up 13 states.
So the 19th century, Andrew Johnson gets Alaska, or at least is president when William Seward negotiates for Alaska. Polk gets half of Mexico, right? And it was half of Mexico, and bad news to the people who live there already. But and then Jefferson bought Louisiana territory. I mean, to go from sea to shining sea and actually realize that and settle that territory, I think that's significant. How the states kind of get their shape and origin.
Other presidents who encourage expansionist feelings, like Polk, are often more acknowledged. One such president is Thomas Jefferson, who, unlike Polk, is often recognized by the public.
Okay, Louisiana Purchase is a big thing. He was leader of the Democratic Republican Party, which they wanted to do more power in the smaller local, state, individual governments as opposed to a large central government. Stuff with that. Believed in the small man, not the big wealthy guys. But yeah.
The Declaration of Independence. He was a friggin' boss for that reason.
To work out the fight between Britain and France.
Everyone knows about Thomas Jefferson and the Louisiana Purchase, but it was Polk who acquired much more land than Jefferson.
Jefferson and Polk both acquired large amounts of land. Jefferson bought the Louisiana Purchase, Polk won the Mexican Cession and Oregon Territory. Which territory was bigger?
And I'm not a big square mileage guy, but I think it's the biggest acquisition. Is it bigger than Louisiana Purchase? I think it is.
In fact, the Louisiana Purchase made by Jefferson was only 828,000 square miles, about 300,000 miles less than the 1 million square miles obtained by Polk.
Through treaties, Polk acquired 260,000 square miles of Texas territory and just about 300,000 square miles of Oregon territory.
Polk had greater accomplishments in obtaining a larger amount of land than Jefferson. Polk remains an obscure figure in history, while Jefferson remains fairly well known. John F. Kennedy is another one of the better recognized frontier exploring presidents. Though a little less known than Jefferson, his name still rings bells in the minds of many.
I know he got assassinated, and that was really sad. A lot of people were really upset. And JFK also wanted to go to the moon. I remember that, and I like JFK because he wanted.
He worked for some civil, like he wanted civil rights and stuff.
And what about... During Kennedy's presidency, Americans began their journey to the moon. Through his New Frontier Plan, Kennedy was able to create excitement in the population as Americans left the boundaries of Earth and headed for space. This was the same expansionist enthusiasm, replicated 114 years later, that was created in Polk's Manifest Destiny when the country expanded its borders to touch 2 seas. Equal in their accomplishments on the frontier, only Polk is the forgotten president. Though without Manifest Destiny, America would not be the country that it is today, Polk is often criticized for his expansionist actions. Some historians, like Timothy Foote, Matthew Crenson, and Benjamin Ginsburg, see Polk as an imperialist who abused his power as president. These historians say that the war with Mexico was an unprovoked attack that wasn't even supported by those of his own party. However, only 14 of the 223 representatives in the House voted against Polk's declaration of war with Mexico, and only 2 out of the 50 senators in the Senate voted nay. They did this partially in response to foreign threats.
None can fail to see the danger to our safety and future peace if Texas remains an independent state or becomes an ally or dependency of some foreign nation more powerful than ourselves.
At the time, a young Abraham Lincoln did oppose the war, calling it unconstitutional and aggressive. He saw the American invasion onto Mexican territory as imperialistic, but he did not look at how the people in those territories felt. Mexico was not convinced that it should extend the rights that the southern Mexican citizens had to the settlers in the territory Polk acquired. They did not feel like Mexican citizens, and some described the neglect those settlers suffered as criminal. Many of the settlers wanted to be part of the U.S. because this area was already dependent on American trade. Polk not only improved America by adding territory for Mexico, but he improved the lives of those settlers living in those acquired lands. His biggest strength, however, was his ability to set 4 goals and stick to them. Today, this trait would be especially admired in politics where people make empty promises. In contrast to today, Polk was dedicated to his agenda.
No president who performs his duties faithfully and consciously can have any leisure.
Polk believed strongly in his mandate to perform his goals. He used the Walker Tariff to reduce tariffs from 32% to 25%. He established a treasury with his independent treasury system. He acquired Oregon through the negotiations of a treaty with the British, and he acquired California through the Mexican-American War and the subsequent Mexican Cession. Instead of giving the voting population empty promises, Polk was remarkable in that he was able to state his goals and actually follow through.
I mean, of all the presidents set out agendas for what he wants to do, James K. Polk actually did it. He said everything he wanted to do, and he did it all. Even said he only wanted to serve 1 term, and he promised to, and he did.
This is a drastic contrast of politics today. Presidents often leave voters with hollow words and empty ideals, breaking promises, and leaving those who believe in them disappointed. This was exemplified in 1988 by the policies of George H.W. Bush.
Raise taxes and I'll say no, and they'll push and I'll say no, and they'll push again and I'll say to them, read my lips. No.
Bush eventually broke that promise during his presidency, raising taxes and outraging the public. It was significant that Polk, unlike many others, was able to keep his promises. Polk also pledged to only serve one term, and he kept that promise as well.
I think that Polk's one-term pledge, at the beginning of his campaign, should be remembered and adopted by more politicians today. There might be less gridlock today if more politicians like Polk set out an agenda and weren't afraid to stand behind it.
Today, many politicians say they have an agenda, but procrastinate on getting any of it done.
I have said repeatedly that I intend to close Guantanamo, and I will follow through on that.
Instead of keeping his promise, President Obama signed an executive order that resumed trials for Guantanamo detainees, keeping Guantanamo Bay open through the end of his first term. Putting a limit on himself also forced Polk and those working with him to get done what they said they'd get done in a timely manner. Keeping his one-term pledge also showed how democratic Polk was. Some politicians search for high jobs because they like the power, but Polk finished his term and left office. In his one term, Polk was effective, fulfilling his agenda in a short time, 4 years, while escaping the pressures of re-election, meaning his sole focus was on his responsibilities as president. Not widely acknowledged for his work, James K. Polk was one of America's most influential presidents. Through Manifest Destiny, Polk expanded America to the continental borders it has today. He was hardworking and serious about his goals. He kept the promises he made on the campaign trail, a trait much needed in today's politics. For being a straightforward president, and for his expansion of American territory, Polk deserves more recognition from the American people.